So this is another great question. How will climate change affect food production over the globe? And how will it affect food production and the farms in Australia? So let's start with the global answer first. Depending on where you are in the globe, climate change will either increase your potential to be able to produce food because you'll have more growing days, you'll have more heat in the system, so things will grow faster. This comes with another risk of that means some pests that eat the food or decrease your food production capacity will also be able to grow faster. And so we need to manage that type of changing interaction as a species if we're going to try and increase the food production in those regions. Those regions are also at risk of increased fire. Now, in other regions, more heat in the system is bad, and you end up with much more drought conditions, much more impacts of extreme heat, such as heat waves or really hot days. And that is damaging to food production. Now, that's in the terrestrial ecosystem. In the marine ecosystem, depending on what you're growing and where you're growing it, then that will impact on the productivity of what it is that you're doing, your operations. So will food production be impacted? Yes. How will it be impacted? At a global scale, it really depends. It's really complicated. And so, but I think the most important thing to remember is humans are producing more food today than they have ever produced in the history of humankind. The biggest challenge for having enough food for humans on the planet is actually human population. It's not climate change. Human population is increasing much faster than the impacts of climate change are increasing, and so that's the biggest challenge. Now, we also have a question of what will it do to Australian farms? Well, in Australian farms, we have the problem of climate change has different impacts across different regions, and depending on what you're growing, are you growing cattle for beef or are you growing tomatoes in a greenhouse? You have different risks and different challenges that you're managing. And so how climate change is going to impact on farms is a really, really difficult question to answer because it's different for different places. Some places will be happy to see some increased heat because it's very cold, and they'll even like to see the landscape drying out because it's very wet, and they're their two biggest challenges for growing food in those regions. And other regions will see that it's going to get too hot and too dry, and there's going to be too much competition for water, so they won't be able to keep operating the farming operations they use today. They will have to change. So it's a really complicated question, and it really depends on exactly what you're trying to grow and where you're trying to grow it.